Well, welcome back from the break. Excited to get back into critical and creative thinking. Coming back from the break, we're going to move into actually a practical exercise here, a little bit of a game, a logical game, to allow you to kind of work together to come up with some a solution. What I'd like you to do is get in groups of 2 or 3, and the plan is, part of the logical game is that you have to pretend as if you're a detective. Your group are working as if you're detectives to solve a crime. You're pretending you're a detective that has just arrived at the scene of a crime, and you have to solve what happened in that crime. All right? So let's look at some of the information that you will be given while you're on the case. All right. The case. A man lies bleeding on the pavement. Near his body are a mint, a plate, and a spent .45 caliber shell. All right? The mystery that you and your team has to solve as detective is, why was the man shot? All right? After a few minutes, after 3 minutes, I'm going to allow you guys as teams to ask some questions. And the answer to that question is either going to be yes, no, I do not know, not relevant, or rephrase your question. All right? So at the end of the time, I'll go from team to team, allowing you to ask a question, but the possible answers that you will receive from me is yes, no, I don't know, not relevant, or rephrase your question. Again, the case, but the mystery is, why was the man shot? Gather into your groups and start working on that. You have 3 minutes to start thinking through what that may be.
A group of 4 here?
Yeah, Chat and Barrios, make sure you're a part of a team.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, come on. It looks like the plate and the fork. It could be a red herring. Distraction. Let's break it down using our critical and creative thinking skills. Break it down.
It's candy.
Non-obviously.
Because it says candy.
Is that an assumption or a fact?
Well, I'm going off the title. Candy is shell, so I have to assume that the mint is
Okay. So at this time, your groups have an opportunity to ask some questions to get further information. Remember, these are the only possible answers that you can receive from me. All right, this group back here, Chaplain Rico and Chaplain Barrios, what question would you have?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Is he bleeding from a gunshot wound?
All right, everyone needs to pay attention. Yes.
Is he bleeding from a gunshot wound?
Is he bleeding from a gunshot wound? Yes. Yes, Chaplain Mount.
Is the mint is that candy?
No. Okay, back to this group, Chaplain Rico.
Is he at a restaurant?
Is he at a restaurant? No.
Was he at a
Yes.
bank?
Was he at a bank? No. But, yes.
Was he at his house?
No. Yes.
Was he at a mint?
Yes.
Was he at a mint?
Does anybody like to solve at this point, or would you like to keep asking questions? Was he at a mint, a federal mint? The answer was yes. It's y'all's opportunity to ask a question if you have a question.
You're just ready to solve that, Jeremy.
Yes, would you like to solve the puzzle?
Is the person, is the man the guard?
No.
Is the plate a dinner plate?
No. Yes, Chet Mount, would you like to solve the
I
puzzle?
think we are. Abe and I collaboratively would like to solve it.
Okay, go ahead, Chapman.
Maybe the man was at the and Plufka. Sorry, Chaplain Plufka. So the man was robbing, maybe said mint at the federal place, had the gold, came out, and was shot by maybe a security officer
Okay.
with a .45 caliber.
Okay.
Ship.
He had the what?
We had an actual mint gold plate.
Okay, yes, very good. Chet Mount, your team solved the puzzle here.
All right.
Good job.
All right.
All right, so here's the answer. For clarity, the man was shot while robbing the federal mint. Great job in thinking through that one. He carried a plate of a $20 bill. The guard shot him to keep him from getting away. All right. The point of this game is to show the importance of assumptions while making conclusions. Every fact listed is 100% true. However, you made some assumptions about the facts in order to answer the question. The pictures of the dinner plate and fork and knife created some false assumptions. The word mint created some false assumptions just based upon your experiences. When you say mint, you think food. When you see a dinner plate, you associate those together. The dinner plate was a false assumption, or red herring, as also called. It led you to believe that the man's death had something to do with dinner, a restaurant, spouse jealousy, something like that. And many of your questions that you asked showed that you guys, as a group, collectively kind of made those assumptions. Was he at a restaurant? Was it a dinner plate? Those were some of the questions that you asked. Once you finally got to the answer, you realized that all this information was 100% true, 100% facts. But because of the assumptions that you added in, it led you very far away from the conclusion that was really there. And so how important facts and assumptions are to coming up with an understanding, to being able to have a full premise of what's going on. That through that premise, you could run it through reason, and then that reason comes to a conclusion. All right, so great job working on that game. We're going to move on to how facts and assumptions affect the decision-making processes, okay? Yes. Yes, Chet Plufka.
So as we did that exercise, it reminded me of that, a couple slides where it had fact plus fact plus fact
Yes.
equals conclusion. And we have the facts, but some of those facts led us to an improper conclusion.
Correct.
So it just connected that tissue for me of, and having the team helped
Yeah.
get outside the box to see some of that. So I can
Oh,
begin to see
absolutely.
how this makes sense of having other people to bounce this stuff off of can
Oh,
be
great.
super helpful, and how as a staff, different viewpoints are going to help us understand the problem set that we're trying to face.
Yeah,
so this
absolutely.
This is really helpful. Thank you.
No, thank you for kind of connecting those dots for us. Yes, Chapman Vadors.
I was thinking similarly in that words matter, definitions matter, and just my brain naturally gravitated to a plate just instantly because I saw the picture of it. But being able just to take a moment, kind of take a step back and clearly define what are the potential types of mints are there.
Yeah,
I immediately thought of a dinner mint.
right.
And similarly, just my brain automatically gravitated, that's the only answer to plate, because it's right there.
Yeah.
But just collectively, being able to take a step back and like, hey, what other potential definitions could there be?
Yeah, absolutely. And this kind of really shows you that critical and creative thinking is a skill. It's something that you have to develop and define and work on to make sure that you're not leaning into red herrings. You're not leaning into assumptions that are moving you away from the conclusions or the solutions that you're trying to solve for your command. We're going to look at how facts and assumptions play a part in the military decision-making processes, right? The MDMP, which is used for what type of problems? Tactical problems. Very good. And the problem-solving process is used for all kinds of other problems that are non-tactical, right, in that statement. So you can see here some facts that you see in the MDMP, and then some assumptions and some examples here, right? An MDMP example, scout platoon reports that they saw an enemy digging in Operation Horn, right? That's a fact. The assumption is the enemy will continue to improve their defensive position in Operation Horn, right? That's the assumption. If we allow them to continue digging, they're going to develop their defensive positions. At different times of war and rules of engagement, those facts and assumptions play a huge part in allowing soldiers to engage. And we have to understand the difference between a fact and assumption. Military problem-solving process example here of a fact. I make $1,000 a week at my job, and then the assumption is I will continue. I did last week, I did the week before, I will continue to do that. We interact with soldiers all the time that assume that they're going to continue to make X amount of dollars, and so they spend the full amount of money in finances without understanding that it's still an assumption that they'll be continue to paid at that rate. Or it's an assumption that they won't have anything else come into their life that they'll have to pay for. So understanding how assumptions and facts affect both the MD&P process and problem-solving process allows you to kind of almost take a step back, work within a collaborative space of a staff to be able to look at the problem from the best angle you can. All right. Fact, statement of truth, observable and relevant to the problem, and then assumptions are not observable but relevant to the problem. So what I want you to remember from this, and this is what we reference even with the sun, right? There's no such thing as a future fact. There's no such thing as a future fact. If you find yourself talking to somebody you believe about something that will happen in the future, you're not talking about a fact, you're talking about an assumption. Hey, tomorrow we will do this, this, and this, or tomorrow this, or this will happen. Those are assumptions. They may be firm assumptions based upon history, based upon other facts, but it's still to be an assumption. Chet and Barrios. Right, the example of the sun. That's a pretty firm, foundational assumption based upon the fact of the last 6,000 years, but it's still an assumption that we live our daily lives on. You will need assumptions to make decisions. Fact plus facts plus facts equals conclusion is not a way that we live, and it's not the right way to live. You need assumptions to be able to inform you of directions and decisions. Assumptions are very, very important, but it has to be understood which are facts and which are assumptions so that we're not relying on an assumption as if it's a fact. All right. Most of the decisions that were made that we make on a daily basis are a combination of both facts and assumptions. We need them both. All right. We see that how important it is as leaders that we utilize both critical and creative thinking within the military decision-making processes, both tactical and non-tactical decision-making processes, so that we can understand and provide our commander, our leaders, with the right conclusion or the right solution to the problems that they present us. We're going to talk a little bit about how as leaders, we're expected to have attributes of intellect. We're expected to come into our leadership position with strengths and attributes of who we are as leaders. All right? Critical and creative thinking resides in the leader attribute of intellect. And we're going to break down what that looks like. What does it look like to be a leader that has intellect? What does it look like to be a leader that's defined by critical and creative thinking as well as the other attributes? There are three attributes of intellect, and it aligns with critical and creative thinking, and we're going to move into talking about that next. All right. Leader attribute, intellect. As you look on the board, you see how critical and creative thinking applies in some regard to all the different attributes of the Army profession. The Army profession of a leader. Intellect includes mental agility, judgment, and innovation. And this comes outside the Army Leadership Requirements Model, ADP 6-22, for reference. so that you can know what you're expected to have as a leader, as a military leader, as a staff officer. We've already laid the foundation of what the Army profession is. We've already laid the foundation of what it looks like to be a soldier. Now we're building upon that foundation to what it looks like to be a leader, to what the Army expects you as a chaplain, as the leader of your staff section, the unit ministry team, to incorporate into what you bring to the table. And so you see mental agility, critical and creative thinking, very important. Judgment, critical and creative thinking. And then innovation, obviously a focus on creative thinking. All right, so we're going to break down what those look like, and we're going to break them down one at a time. All right, mental agility. Chaplain Vodoris, could you read mental agility for us?
Adapt to changing situations. Be flexible. Don't get stuck on a poor solution. Curiosity. Examine problems from multiple points of view. Isolate the main problem.
Very good. Thank you for doing that. You see here the curiosity. As we mentioned earlier, it's one of the primary motivators for critical thinking. It's the part of your mind that says, I wonder if, or I wonder about, or I wonder if this could work, or if that could work. I wonder if, and you expand your ability to go outside your box, if you would, to bounce into somebody else's thought. I wonder if Chaplain Rico has a better idea than I have. I wonder if Chaplain Plefka has a better idea. I wonder if Chaplain Herden came from an experience that would benefit this situation. That curiosity is what drives and allows your mind to stay flexible and allows you to keep you from getting stuck in a poor solution. All right. Critical thinking part of mental agility is able to look at the problem from multiple areas, multiple different perspectives. You're analyzing, you're breaking the problem down, and that's allowing you to kind of process from different points of view. It helps you isolate the main problem, understand the problem from different perspectives, goes about fixing it. So that is mental agility, very important as an officer and a leader. Next is sound judgment. Chaplain Mount, could you read that for us?
Judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgments. So out of our critical thinking box, assess situations accurately, make sensible decisions in a timely manner, and then in the creative thinking box, compare possible courses of action and decide what one to take, consideration of consequences.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. Critical thinking part of sound judgment. We're learning from experiences. We're able to assess problems very quickly. Think back to the very first brain teaser. A lot of the problems that you solve were probably based upon some of the experiences that you've had. Whether it be Space Invaders, you got that one right out. Have you played Space Invaders before, Chaplain Sarmiento? Yeah, Atari back in the day, right? So that experience gave you the ability to kind of see right through what that was. And so those multiple experiences, multiple perspectives allows you to have good sound judgment. You'll remember that developing and comparing possible solutions to the problem are part of both the MD&P and problem-solving process, and how important that creative thinking becomes in that. The ability to foresee and account for the possible consequences of your action. So sound judgment is the ability to look forward and to say, okay, based upon assumptions, right, because there is no future fact, based upon assumptions, this is the trickle effect of decisions that we're going to make. It may be a good solution today, but is it a good solution tomorrow? Is it a good solution 5 years down the road? Sound judgment is able to look at the experience that somebody has had and apply that into the outcome or the trickle effect of that decision. All right. The next one, innovation. Chaplain Rico, could you read that for us, please?
Innovation changed a defensive weapon into an offensive weapon. John H. Parker during the Spanish-American War, the late 19th century. Question the status quo, find new ways to do things.
Yeah, very good. Creative thinking, a part of innovation. You're questioning the status quo. Hey, we've always done it this way. Okay, well, let's try. Maybe there's a better solution. Maybe there's a better solution that we haven't done this before. Finding new ways to solve the problems that you've been given. All right. If you know of the history of Lieutenant John Parker, he was a creative thinker and a great innovator. He utilized, at that time, doctrine states that the Gatling gun was a defensive weapon. In its role, it was certainly effective since it could be fired from 350 to 400 rounds per minute. But however, Lieutenant General Parker came up with the idea to make it an offensive weapon, to put it on the offense, and that changed dramatically changed the course of the battles that he was in, which shifted the Army's process of utilizing these new weapons and utilizing these new weapon systems. And so his innovative way to solve the problem of offensive operations created a culture shift within the military. So now we've seen how innovation can be a major part of what we do in the military. It's not just a side note, it's not just an afterthought, it's a major part of what we do as our staff work. What we see, though, is that there's going to be some barriers to our thinking. There's going to be some things that are going to block, whether it be the red herring that you've already experienced with the game that we played as detectives, or many other things that could be barriers to you moving through that. These are the barriers to critical thinking. We're going to go through them one by one and allow you to see how important it is that you just recognize that there are barriers to your ability to think critically, to identify the real problem that is at hand. And how important it is to identify the real problem. I'm sure as counselors or sure as individuals that you've interacted with, you see how important it is to really get down to the problem at hand. All right. I'm going to move forward so that I don't take more of your time. Is that okay? Okay. All right. Keep going. Okay. All right, you see on the slide, you're going to see the 7 steps of the MDM process, which is for Chaplain Rico.
Which one?
What type of problems?
Tactical.
Yes, tactical problems, absolutely. We see the 7 steps of the MDMP process. Why do you think that that would be placed here within the slide for brainstorming? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say in particular with course of action, going from development to approval, requires a great deal of brainstorming.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the absolute answer, right? We already do brainstorming within the MDMP process, course of action being the primary one that we do that in. We just don't call it brainstorming. There's processes that we do, we just don't kind of label them as brainstorming, but that's exactly what it is. And so understanding that there are some rules that apply to brainstorming, right? If we really want the brainstorming session to go well, we need to kind of follow these rules. We need to allow the issues or problems that we're trying to solve to really have the opportunity to be solved in the right way. So here are some of the rules of brainstorming. Allowing plenty of time. As you've already seen in your game or your brain teaser that we started with, time can really constrain your creative thinking. So allow plenty of time. Appoint a note taker. Don't do this all to yourself. Make sure somebody's bringing information in. So if there's a good idea or a good shared collective idea, that somebody writes it down. Gather lots of information. Make sure that it's free enough that people can share what they need to share, right? You're thinking in that creative process, you're thinking what you can bring to the table. Get no judgments on the share. If Chaplain Rico shares something, Chaplain Pleska isn't going to judge him on that. There's a level of being able to know that there's a safe space in brainstorming. Everyone takes notes. Everyone has ideas that they're sharing. Sometimes people are verbal processors. Sometimes people are better processing writing things down. And then piggyback ideas. We've already seen that in the games that we've played or the connections, that when Chapman Sarmiento says, is it a mint? Yes, it is a mint, right? A federal mint. That allowed you guys collectively to start going the right direction towards solving the detective problem. And so piggybacking on ideas is important. All right. So you've seen how important it is to understand what brainstorming is and how it relates to the MDMP process, how it relates to the entire process of critical and creative thinking, so that you know how to avoid the barriers of critical thinking, how to stimulate creative thinking, and now what brainstorming looks like and some of the rules that you can apply to allow that brainstorming session to come to fruition.
So as we look at the slide up there, would we say brainstorming is creative thinking?
Brainstorming, yes, absolutely. It's a part of creative thinking. Brainstorming is a way of bringing about creative thinking. Brainstorming would be a tool to use to stimulate creative thinking. So as you see in the in steps 3 through 6, during those steps, brainstorming would be a great tool to bring into those different steps to say, okay, and you could utilize brainstorming to bring about creative thinking in all kinds of ways, whether it be in your own personal life. Hey, we need a new car. That's a problem. Let's brainstorm of what that looks like. These rules can help you apply. All right, so we've gone through a lot of information. I want to kind of take some time just to discuss with you some questions. This is the information that we have gone through, but I want to ask you a few questions before we do a summary here. How do we incorporate development of critical thinking into leader development plan? How do you incorporate that into your leader development plan? What are some ideas that you would have? How do you incorporate development of critical thinking in your leader development plan?
You could actually send people maybe to some classes. I think there's a creative and critical thinking class.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, all right. Adding to their skill of critical thinking. Yeah. Incorporating and connecting to those common operating picture of what leaders are doing is going to be important. Really breaking down what the issues are is part of critical thinking. All right. So are critical thinkers born or are they made? What do you think about that? Born or made? Chapman Mount, what do you think?
I think made.
Okay.
Critical thinking.
Okay.
Just within organizations and how they are. I mean, those are definitely, it's a skill set that can be taught and encouraged and developed.
Okay, absolutely. Yes, Chapman Barrio would disagree here.
I would agree with Chapman Barrio, but can we also say that there are some that are born?
Sure, I would agree. Yeah, I would say both. Right? There's some that are gifted or strength in that area of thinking, but the Army looks at it as if the Army expects you as a military officer to have both, the Army expects you to be able to develop that ability. So if you are automatically gifted in critical thinking or creative thinking, you still are expected as a military officer to balance yourself out within intellect, to balance yourself out in that way. And understanding that there's going to be personalities and experiences that leans one individual stronger or the other individual the other way. But the expectation as military officers, a part of the leadership attributes model, you have both critical and creative thinking. And so that's why the Army would view it as something that can be developed. All right. So we're going to go into our summary here. This is the information that we have talked about throughout the class. This is the information that we've laid a foundation for you. The expectation that you have a deep understanding of what critical and creative thinking is, especially the definitions. We've talked a little bit about the logical models of the Army, just briefly covering over them. You'll have further classes in that in the future. We've talked about how facts and assumptions are important to making decisions. We've looked at barriers to critical thinking, and we've talked about how to stimulate some creative thinking. All right. So at this time, I'm going to hand out to you your 10-question quiz. You'll have 5 minutes to complete, and then we'll have these turned in. But this is to test your knowledge of what you've retained throughout the class and your ability to provide that information back to me as your instructor. All right, you have 5 minutes to complete this quiz. All right, pencils down. I appreciate what you guys have put in. At the end of class, please turn in your sheets. Thank you very much for being open to understanding this material. Thank you for the opportunity to share and collaborate together. Participation was very high. I really appreciate that. Excited to continue to build these building blocks to being the military officer and military chaplain that you've been called to be. Thank you. Have a good day.
Chaplain Murray.
I was hoping to do this. You will make me into.
I think I was going to fail that quiz.
Yeah.
So nervous.